Each and every day, we encounter various forms of media. Media projects ideas about certain individuals and reinforces our perceptions of such individuals, which in turn can negatively affect their agency, or the ability to define their own reality. In movies and television, the characters, themes, and messages affect our interpretations of reality. Through signification, or the art of interpreting our world through signs, individuals are able to construct meaning based on the ingested signs from the media. For example, if a person were to see Kung Fu Panda, they might infer that all Chinese people know Kung Fu. Lou Turner, professor in the Department of Afro-American Studies at the University of Illinois, agrees.
If you stand around long enough at a water cooler at an office somewhere, you'll hear the banter back and forth. I mean, in real life. I don't mean the stuff on TV. And the banter pretty much follows the kind of banter you hear in the series The Office or Cheers or something like that. And it's that we get so much from the TV, and we simply recreate the images and the discourse that we hear.
However, media is not just limited to television and movies, but advertising as well. When looking at advertising, we should not view it any differently from other media like movies, television, or print publications. Advertising is an equally powerful form of media, with the ability to deliver a potentially harmful message about a group of people.
Need a tip when you're stuck in an awkward situation?
Too easy. KFC's Crowd Pleaser. A huge variety of delicious chicken and plenty of tasty sides.
Advertising has a much greater consequence for the image of black people than, say, films, quite frankly, because, again, on one hand, a film is something you desire to go see. You're putting that certain kind of investment, whereas advertising is something that it's kind of inescapable. You can't kind of get away from it. So you become inundated with it. My current interest or concern about advertising, and advertising is very short, very soundbitey, and the nature of the way ads are made from a cinematic point of view is that a lot of the jump cuts in advertising, which you don't see. In the film, it's much longer. Certainly may have jump cuts in it, but advertising, because you have a very limited window of a minute or more or less, there's a lot of jump cutting, and you have to unpack a narrative in it. So it is all image. I mean, it's like one still almost after another. Very, very little actual narrative, very little time, and so you're essentially inundated with image, jump image, cut image, and whatnot, and that kind of, and then it's kind of stitched together. That kind of filmmaking, which is the dominant filmmaking, people don't realize that filmmaking follows advertising. Advertising doesn't follow filmmaking. Most filmmakers, the best filmmakers, really use advertising as their, so to speak, paradigm.
In this short film, we will examine the representation of African Americans in advertising throughout the 20th century and the potential negative effects to our discourse due to the negative portrayals of African Americans in advertising. In the early 20th century, African Americans were depicted in several caricatures as described by Donald Bogle in his book Toms, Coons, Mulattoes, Mammies, and Bucks, An Interpretive History of Blacks in American Films. Such caricatures were also used in advertising. According to Bogle, the Tom caricature comes from a short 12-minute film created in 1903 called Uncle Tom's Cabin. One of the film's main characters, Uncle Tom, was one of the first depictions of an African American in film, although the part was played by a white actor wearing burnt cork blackface makeup. Because of the character Uncle Tom from the short film, the Tom caricature was born. Although the Tom was not widely used in advertising, it is an important caricature to consider because it paved the way for others. Bogle claims that the Tom caricature opened the door for other black caricatures to be created in the scope of white authority. The coon is an African American caricature that developed from the Tom caricature. However, coons can be differentiated from Toms because they are considered lazier and more buffoonish and lack the servient features of Toms. According to Bogle, coons were unreliable, crazy, lazy, subhuman creatures that were good for nothing but stealing, shooting, and butchering the English language. Bogle also claims that the coon developed into one of the most racist and degrading of all African American caricatures. A couple famous coons were often depicted in the advertising realm. One was Rastus, who advertised for cream of wheat. Rastus was not only depicted as butchering the English language, but further was shown as unintelligent. Another coon within the advertising world was shown on the signs, menus, cups, and other souvenirs of a restaurant chain that was called the Coon Chicken Inn. Much like McDonald's uses of the Golden Arches as its brand logo today, the Coon Chicken Inn used the degrading image of a coon as its brand logo. The Coon Chicken Inn was a successful restaurant chain from the 1920s to the 1950s. The Pickaninny was another African American caricature that was essentially the child version of a coon. According to Bogle, pickaninnies are harmless, oddball African American children whose eyes pop and hair stands on end. The Pickaninny caricature in American film often acted as a comic relief, just as the character Topsy did in Uncle Tom's Cabin. Bogle says that the antics of pickaninnies were often pleasant, entertaining, and diverting. Hendler's Ice Cream used a version of the pickaninny in an advertisement for a frozen treat that they produced called a Pickaninny Freeze. Fairbanks Gold Dust Washing Powder also used two pickaninnies named Goldie and Dusty as their product brand in the early 1900s. These two pickaninnies became known as the Gold Dust Twins and were often shown on gold dust washing powder, either cleaning or bathing in a tub. At one point, Gold Dust Washing Powder even used the tagline, "Let the Gold Dust Twins do your work." The last of the caricatures that was widely used in advertising in the early 1900s is the Mammy. Bogle claims that the Mammy is similar to the Tom caricature in the idea that she is a servant, friendly, and submissive to white authority. Mammies were often shown as larger African American women wearing handkerchiefs and acting in the role of cook or housemaid for a white family, as shown in the American film classic Gone with the Wind.
If you say one word to Mother, I won't eat a bite.
Well, keep your shawl on your shoulder. I ain't even free to get all freckled after the buttermilk I done put on you all this winter, reaching in my circles. Oh, now, Miss Scarlett, you come on and be good and eat just a little, honey.
No, I'm going to have a good time today and do my eating at the barbecue.
One of the most famous mammies used in advertising is Aunt Jemima. The early 1900s showed Aunt Jemima as a larger set African American woman wearing a domestic bandana. Essentially, she fit nicely into the caricature of the mammy. Aunt Jemima's modern logo is a seemingly more fit African American woman that is not wearing a handkerchief on her head and is also wearing pearl earrings.